Okay, can people hear me? You guys can hear me, okay. I think there's some kind of law that says that all AI talks have to include a picture of the Terminator. So I figured I'd just get it over right away, right here at the start. I'm going to cut directly to the chase. Despite what you see in the movies, artificial intelligence does not present any significant existential threat to the future of humanity. Certainly when you compare it to the real, immediate dangers of things like genetic engineering, near-Earth asteroids, nuclear winters, and Donald Trump. Now, this is not to say that AI can't be dangerous, particularly in the wrong hands, if it's inadequately tested or if it's deployed without incorporating appropriate safeguards. But the same is true of many other advanced technologies, from cars to Cuisinarts. And bad news, you won't be uploading your mind to a computer anytime soon, if ever. In fact, it's far from clear that this concept means anything sensible at all. It's a sort of pseudo-religious claptrap that's promoted by wannabe prophets who are peddling eternal salvation, let's say. So why do we hear so much nonsense about these ideas? Because of a remarkable confluence of historical precedents, social trends, and just plain misunderstandings. Now, the general public has been fed a steady diet of apocalyptic robot movies and stories, so it's not a surprise that people have a seriously flawed understanding of what AI is and where it might go in the future. But it doesn't stop there. These misconceptions have unfortunately been reinforced by the press. Sometimes with the implicit or explicit encouragement of people who benefit from hyping their own activities and work. The current fears of annihilation of the human race have probably found their most influential articulation in a thoughtful and scholarly tome by Oxford University philosophy professor Nick Bostrom. How many of you have read his book, Superintelligence? Good, 3 or 4 people? Good. His basic argument, for those of you who haven't read the book, is that machines are getting smarter and smarter, and at some point in the future, they're going to vastly exceed human intelligence, rendering us obsolete. What are we going to do when they become so smart and powerful that they're going to stop at nothing to achieve their goals? When robots can do anything a human can do, are they going to decide that they have no use for us puny humans? Are they going to swat us like flies? Well, I've got news. There's no they there. Robots are not people. And if you look at what people actually did throughout history to make a living, most of it has already been usurped by machines that are faster, better, more capable, and far less expensive. Put simply, this is called automation. And the truth about AI is not that it's some sort of magical effort to recreate human intelligence. It's just a natural continuation of the long-standing process of automating tasks that previously people thought required human intelligence, skill, and attention. See, robots don't have independent goals and desires. A robot that's designed to fold and wash and fold laundry, it may be plenty sophisticated. It might learn not to put the laundry away when you're sleeping, or determine exactly how you like your shirts folded. But it isn't going to wake up one day and say, oh my God, what a fool I've been. I really want to play the great concert halls of Vienna. So why is all this brouhaha about the dangers of runaway artificial intelligence so mistaken? Let's start by observing that the whole concept of human intelligence is problematic to start with. The plain fact is that no one has any coherent or persuasive theory of what human intelligence is, much less how one might reproduce it in a computer program. Psychologists see the whole notion of human intelligence as deeply flawed. particularly as it's measured by an IQ test. What psychologists actually say is that IQ doesn't measure intelligence at all, simply what they call developmental competence. And that's why your IQ is actually calculated as a function of your age. Beyond childhood, it's basically meaningless. As psychologists are fond of pointing out, there are many different kinds of intelligence. There's social, emotional, analytic, athletic, musical, and so on. Now, this is not to say that some people aren't smarter than others, merely that intelligence is not an objective, quantifiable property like your height or your blood pressure. It's a more subjective, culturally dependent concept, something like beauty. So reducing it to a simple linear numerical measure like IQ creates an inappropriate patina of objectivity and precision. Now, more to the point, it's even less meaningful to talk about machines having an IQ. Suppose we give the same IQ test to a machine that we administer to humans. Wow. It performs better on memory tests, in predicting the next number in a sequence. Not only that, it only took 1 millisecond to accurately complete the same arithmetic problems that took Sally, that's the girl on the previous slide, an hour to do. The machine must be super smart. Of course not. This is nonsense. Now, you might wonder whether the fact that you can program a machine to play chess or Jeopardy or to drive a car or beat a Go champion means that the machine is intelligent. Personally, I think not. While it's true that machines perform an increasingly diverse array of tasks that people perform by applying their native intelligence, all we're discovering is that lots of problems that we thought required intelligence to solve actually don't. There are other ways to solve them, and that's what we're using machines to do. Let me give you a historical example. Consider how we perform calculations. As you might know, calculating used to be the province of highly trained specialists. They were actually known as calculators. It was a profession. And this profession required considerable intelligence and attention to detail and skill. And now this function is performed by tools so inexpensive, they're given away as promotional trinkets at trade shows. Do you think the machines are as smart as the humans because they can perform these calculations? I hope you don't think that. But the story gets worse. If you follow the drumbeat of AI announcements, you may be tempted to conclude that we're actually making progress toward generally intelligent machines. The mythology of artificial intelligence rests on the mistaken impression that the very real achievements we hear so much about in the press are refinements and improvements of some well-understood universal scientific principles. But this, unfortunately, is not the case. You might have seen in the news recently, for example, that a computer program from Google, AlphaGo, beat Lee Sedol, who's a world champion Go player. Now, this is a tremendous technical achievement, but consider how it was done. In this case, it relied on machine learning techniques that find extremely subtle patterns in enormous volumes of data. By contrast, for those of you who were around in 1997, the chess program that beat Garry Kasparov relied mainly on some very sophisticated techniques for what's called heuristic search. Now, one of these programs is not a more general and powerful version of the other. They're different tools for different problems. So thinking about this as a trend and drawing the conclusion that machines are growing ever more intelligent is like saying that your smartphone gets more intelligent every time you download a new application. But do you really think of your phone as getting smarter in the human sense when you download an app? Certainly not in the same sense that you get smarter when you get a degree or study calculus or philosophy. Your smartphone is really the electronic equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. It's a bunch of different information processing tools that are bound together in a single package, and they take advantage of certain commonalities like detailed maps or internet connectivity. So the plain truth is that AI is a collection of engineering tools that can be configured and applied to a growing collection of diverse tasks. At least so far, advances in AI don't constitute progress towards some mythical idea of a generally intelligent machine. To claim that self-driving cars or programs that play board games are steps on the path to general artificial intelligence is like climbing a ladder and claiming progress toward getting to the moon. Now, some futurists, and I'm going to name names, like science fiction writer Victor Vinge and influential but eccentric pundits like Ray Kurzweil, promote the idea of an intelligence singularity, where the machines will suddenly become so smart that they can improve themselves without human assistance, leading to some kind of runaway intelligence. Now, some go further, believing not that we're going to be dominated by the machines, but that we're going to merge with them or upload our minds and become them. I mentioned Nick Bostrom, who wrote Superintelligence. Let's take him, for example. For much of his career, he's been an active supporter of what's called the transhumanist movement, which promotes the idea that ultimately people are going to merge or become machines. Let's look at Kurzweil. He plans to upload his consciousness into the cloud when he dies, and thereby, in his mind, to live forever. Never mind that we have no idea what consciousness is, what it might mean for a machine to be conscious. Now, his books include The Singularity is Near, How to Create a Mind, Transcend, and The Age of Spiritual Machines. Now, just beneath the surface in much of the singularity discussion is what has been characterized as a mystical fervor, sometimes disparagingly referred to as the rapture of the nerds. It's a belief that we're approaching an end to the human era, entering a new age in which the dead may be reanimated through maybe in some kind of electronic form, and we're going to transfer our consciousness into machines or otherwise preserve it in cyberspace, and some kind of new post-biological epoch of life is going to begin. Now, to better understand the fundamentally religious character of this worldview and its seductive appeal, it's helpful to put it in a historical context. For millennia, there have been clerics, soothsayers, and mystics that have articulated visions of the future that are curiously similar to those of the modern-day singularitarians. The most obvious examples in Western culture are Christian and Jewish prophecies of the return of God, heralding the punishment of the non-believers and the salvation of the faithful, who are going to forsake their physical bodies and be reincarnated into a new eternal form that is free of pain and want, and it's going to culminate in their ascent to heaven. Now, the New Age pundits replace faith in God with faith in technology, and they replace heaven with cyberspace. Now, the persistence of these recurrent themes has actually fostered a specialty among religious studies scholars who research the structure and the timing and the content in which these apocalyptic visions take hold. And the modern singularity movement actually has not escaped their notice. For instance, this gentleman, Robert Gerasi, who's a professor of religious studies at Manhattan College, has published an insightful monograph exploring the principles and beliefs of those who are subscribing to the singularitarian perspective. Now, the underlying assumption behind the apocalyptic narrative is that you are the proud owner of an ethereal, magical essence that constitutes your identity. And it's the source of your unique sentience and your consciousness. Now, in religious terms, this is your soul. And this essence can, in principle, be transferred from place to place or from body to body. And in the modern formulation, from human to machine. Now, this may be true or false, but at the very least, there's no widely accepted evidence for this belief, any more than there's support for the existence of spirits and ghosts. Now, the prevalence of this view in major religions is obvious, but it's interesting to note that it pervades secular thought as well. For instance, the idea that you can change or exchange bodies is a staple of Hollywood films. Indeed, Disney productions in particular are very fond of this plot device. So, will we be uploading our minds into machines? You know, the staple of science fiction lore takes on a different cast when you examine it with a more sober eye. So let me just take a quick look at some of the issues that it raises. For starters, in the movies, you'll notice that once someone's mind is uploaded, their original body goes limp, or it's destroyed as part of the process. Well, suppose we copy your brain but skip the step where we deactivate you or knock you off at the same time. You're still sitting there with some silly contraption on your head. Are you likely to think that the electronic copy of you is also you? Which of you gets to go home to your spouse? Which stands to inherit your parents' estate? Now, suppose we ask the new improved electronic you what it wants for lunch. How can it answer that question? When did it last eat? Do you expect it to get hungry after a few hours of diligent computing? If you enjoy eating chocolate ice cream, does your electronic successor feel the same way? How can it when it can't taste food or digest it, at least not in the human sense? Then there's the question of whether this thing has some form of subjective experience. Can it listen to Mozart? Or does it just gobble up whole MP3 files in a single swallow? That was delicious. That sounded great. If you double its clock speed, does it think that everybody started moving in slow motion? While calling it us may provide some fleeting consolation that we have somehow cheated death, the reality might not live up to this expectation. Being preserved in electronic form may provide the same comfort that ancient pyramids afforded their occupants, but I suspect that this will be just as foolish. So let me wrap up. I don't want you to think I'm anti-AI. Nothing could be further from the truth. I think it's an important technology. It's going to have a very big impact, and as big an impact, in my view, and I'm not exaggerating, as the invention of the wheel. But what gives me heartburn is the gratuitous anthropomorphism that pervades the field, which fans the fears of the general public and drives the apocalyptic visions of what would otherwise appear to be very sensible people. AI is not pixie dust that you sprinkle on your computer to make it intelligent. It's a valuable collection of tools and techniques for performing tasks that have resisted prior attempts at automation. We need to get rid in the field of its gee whiz apocalyptic gloss. And we need to stay down, keep our heads down to the real business of building practical systems with economic benefits. I'm not worried about super intelligent machines or whether I'm going to live long enough to be uploaded into cyberspace. Such concerns only serve to distract us from the real threats and the opportunities that mankind is likely to face. So thank you very much.